the creator in the first house. So why would he be associated with the Rudras, who are associated with the eighth house from everything? No, Prajapati created you.
But he creates forms.
He created forms. He's not destroying them. Rudras are breaking forms.
Yeah, but it's like Shiva. It's only to take another form.
Only to take another form. So my meditation on it, and this is my meditation, so you're welcome to have your own opinion, is the first time that you're guaranteed death is the moment you're born. The moment you're born, you're guaranteed to die. So by fact of birth, death is inevitable. So Prajapati guarantees your death by the fact of creating you.
Also Shani Karaka.
Prajapati, the creator, is associated with Saturn. And so the creator, we come back to creation because of the mistakes we've made in the past, the wrong actions we've done. But yes, a very destructive energy in some ways, the creator itself. So when we look at this with the 12 Adityas, the Adityas are giving us the fruit of a house. They're what makes, if the lord of a house is strong, then that which the house represents, we get the benefits of that. Now the concept when we relate the Rudras to that is, a lot of people say, and Sanjay has taught this very in depth in some of his advanced classes, is that the Adityas are just giving. They're the fruit, they're the fruiting of things coming. Where the Rudras, they destroy, but they destroy by not protecting. So it's not when the Rudras are there that the house gets destroyed, it's when they're not protecting. It's when the Rudras are not happy that the house gets destroyed. So this is where, when a lot of problems happening in the chart, Sanjay recommends either Shiva Lingam worship or Jyotirlinga worship. Because the Jyotirlinga, it's the Shiva Linga that's connected to Rudra Abhishek. When you pour water on top of the Jyotirlinga or the Shiva Linga, it's getting Abhishek, and the Rudras are being calmed down. Okay. So now that we have in somewhat understanding that the Rudra is connected to this eighth house. So it's not that the eighth house destroys you. It's when the eighth house no longer sustains you that things go wrong. And it's a very different way to look at it, because we always look at the eighth house as a terrible place. But the eighth house is also that which is keeping us alive and protecting us. It's our longevity. We are here because we have longevity. We are here because there's something protecting the life force in us. So the eighth house and the Rudras are connected with this. Now, at the same time, the Rudras are connected with, it's that eighth house that's keeping us here. It's our pranas that are keeping us here. And so the manifestation of the eighth house, this first manifestation that we're going to talk about, is the pranas that are protecting us. So the first thing we're going to look at with the Mrityupada is where the Mrityupada is in your chart is where the pranas are. It's considered the weak spot. The eighth house, according to Varamahira, is called the Randra Bhava. It's called the sensitive place. Randra means a split, a hole, an aperture, a fissure, a cavity. So the eighth house is this sensitive place. It's the place where we go inside. It's a place of meditation. And so it's a place where we're very sensitive. So a combination of this sensitivity, that where the prana is kept, is a very sensitive inward place. And the manifestation of that is a weak point in us. And so the place of the AA is a place that can be damaged in us. It's a place that can cause health problems because it's a place where the pranas can be injured. Now, Sanjay teaches that that Ravana must have had his AA in the 8th or the 2nd because he was shot by Rama in the navel. And thereby the A8 was in his navel. And so we can look at it, and so I made inference with that with Achilles being also, he had his weak spot in his ankle being connected with his A8 in Pisces or something of that nature. It's an area that I haven't done too much research, but it's a very important concept to realize that the AA is a sensitive place where the pranas are stored. And this is where the real disruption can happen. And it's the lack of protection of that that's causing the problem. I gave just a little quote from Janaka up there. Janaka, Guruji even gave a quote from him earlier today. It says, "One's weaknesses should not be revealed." Janaka was a famous advisor to a very powerful king in ancient India.
Yeah, Chanakya.
Chanaka.
Chanakya. Janaka is the king.
Okay. Yeah.
Janaka is the king and Chanakya is the advisor.
Chanaka and Janaka.
One is J, one is CH.
Yeah, this is an advisor
Yeah.
to the king.
Chanakya.
Yeah.
Chanakya.
That's a Chanakya.
Did I say Janaka? Okay, that's maybe from this morning. I'm sorry. Yeah. Chanaka is what I meant to say. Okay. This is from in Upanishads. "The pranas are indeed the rudras, for they cause all creation to weep." The pranas are indeed the rudras, for they cause all of creation to weep. Very important concept. The rudras are associated with the vayu. The vayu is the life force, the prana in us. So this 8th house, it's the storage place of our pranas. On an external level, the rudras, they rule over storms, they rule over natural disasters and everything violent that happens externally. On an internal side, they represent the transformations in consciousness that happen. The prana is circulating in the body. How it circulates is directly connected to your state of consciousness. Whether there's more prana in your lower chakras or more prana in your higher chakras directly relates to where your mental consciousness is, and vice versa. So on an internal level, the rudras and the pranas represent the transformations of consciousness. On a spiritual level, it's that breaking through the illusion, that full realization and the breaking of the concepts that we hold that hold us back from having deeper insight and realization in our lives. So this is very important to understand the A8, because the A8 is going to be associated with all these things. The sensitivity of prana and the transformations of consciousness and spirituality, and the changing of where the prana is, the pranic flows are how they're moving in us. Now, Saturn is often correlated with the Rudras because he's the planet ruling over the Vayu element. Now, when we look, all the Rudras are connected to the moon. They're all the image of the house they represent. And so most of the time, the focus is on the Aruda Lagna. And so the only thing we really talk about is the moon. The moon as Karaka. But when we start moving to the different houses, each Karaka of the house that the Bhavapada comes from is connected to what that Bhavapada represents. So the Karaka of the 8th house is Saturn. So even though the Mrityupada its primary Karaka is the moon, representing the illusion, the manifestation, the Maya of the 8th house, it's also Karaka by the Karaka of the house that it comes from, and so in this case we have Saturn. So the Mrityupada is a moon, Saturn, Karaka. And what happens when we have a Karaka of something, if you take, for example, the 4th house, we're looking at the 4th lord, we also look at how strong the moon is. Because if the moon is weak, there's going to be problems with the 4th house, that which the Karaka significates. So in the same way, we're looking at the moon, we also look at the strength of Saturn. Because the strength or affliction of Saturn is going to directly relate to what's going to be happening with the A8. Somebody who has a really strong, unafflicted Saturn and well-placed, Saturn is doing nothing but blessings in the chart, they're not going to have that many Mrityupada problems in their life. if Saturn is very afflicted, the Karaka for the Mrityupada is afflicted, there's going to be more problems with that Mrityupada. And now, this is a concept I'm explaining here, but this is a concept that goes over the board with all Bhavapadas. So it's a very, very important concept. Very important concept. And I think this is the first time it's been taught. So, keep going. Keep it the top where I'm actually talking about. Not the page. It's not by page. Now, so there's a concept. So if we see a problem with Saturn in the chart, we know we have to start looking at the Mrityupada as well. So we're not going to just start using the Mrityupada without reason to use the Mrityupada. If we have reason to use the Mrityupada, whether the two reasons are if it's conjunct something important, a dasha of it is running, or if Saturn has a problem. If Saturn has a problem, there's going to be Mrityupada problems in the life. Narayana dasha, the Narayana dasha of the sign containing the A8 is going to show suffering and transformation in people. If you look back, and you can go back in time if it's already happened, and look at the period of your Narayana dasha, of your Mrityupada, you'll see it was a time of a lot of transformation, a little bit more Saturnian energy and suffering was in that period. Because of this, because the manifestation, the face of the 8th house was present at that time. The Vimshrotri dasha is going to show more the mental transformation, how the mind is suffering and changing. Okay. So the first concept about actually utilizing the A8 is the more malefics aspecting or associated with the Mrityupada, the more suffering there is in life. It seems, it's a very simple, actually it's the printed version so it doesn't have where the A8 is placed. I'd wanted to use maybe an example chart from the class so that we get a little more integration instead of just random famous people, which we've been doing this whole week. So is there anybody who wants to volunteer? Somebody who thinks they've had a lot of suffering in their life? You want to use your chart? You want to give him the data? Here, give it to me and I'll read it out. We can even start with my chart. Mrityupada's in Libra.
Make that into the, I guess, the South Indian chart at the bottom, please.
Do you have your?
We increase the font size.
Can you give the birth data?
Oh, this is my birth data. So I was born October 9th, 1976. Vineland, Vineland, New Jersey, at 10:06 p.m.
What's the name of the city?
Vineland,
Violet?
Vineland.
Like a line of wine.
Yes. And if we look at my A8, it's in Libra there. It's kind of squeezing out on the chart, but it has Rahu, Mars, and Venus.
Can you tell us how you got there first so that we don't jump around?
Can we increase?
Okay, how we got to the A8, you mean?
Yeah, just want to make sure that there's.
Okay. Do you know how to calculate the Aruda Lagna?
Yes,
Same thing, except we calculate it from the 8th house.
from the
So the Lord of
okay.
the 8th house is Saturn. We see that he's gone 7 signs from his place. So we go back all the way to 7. And the exception rules, it can't be in the same house it comes from. So it goes all the way back 10 houses from, yes. Okay.
That's all I wanted to ask because
Yeah.
there are differences in the way the exceptions are calculated.
Okay.
Odd.
No, it's just like Aruda Lagna, all
Okay.
Bhavapadas.
There at the top,
Okay.
get that a little bit larger.
The what?
The big
Yeah,
A
yeah.
at the top.
I've just hit it up like 5 times and I went over here and it's as big as it's getting.
Okay. Now it's as simple as this technique. It's as simple as looking at how many malefics are with the A8 and looking at aspects. So we have no Saturn aspect, and the two other main malefics are there. So it's showing two large aspects of suffering in life, two main problems and issues. And this will also, I had an interview to get into school to get my master's in psychology. And my interview, it was basically psychoanalysis. And they psychoanalyzed me for 2 hours. And it felt like they were almost yelling at me at one point, but they were basically getting me to admit that I have repressed anger. And we can see right here, so repressed anger is one problem, and some shock being another type of problem. And we can go into the stories behind that with the sign. Let's go into the next chart. But the more malefics connected to the A8 or aspecting.
So sorry, you saying you have repressed anger because the 8 is Mars Rahu? Yeah.
It's just, yeah. It's showing certain suffering in the life. That's just one level. It's all around. It's how easy the life goes. Okay, the next chart is Suan, and it's May 25th, 1952. (10:17, 13 a.m.) 10, 17, and 13 seconds a.m. Oceanside, California. This is a pretty good